What happens when one of Hollywood's most legendary actors sits down for what should be a simple interview, only to have the host push just a little too far? Tonight, we're breaking down the moment Jack Nicholson absolutely lost it on Jimmy Kimmel's show, and trust me, you won't believe how this escalated. Before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me whose side you're on in this whole situation, because this one is going to divide people. So Jack Nicholson walks onto the stage, and right away, you can feel something's different. The audience is going crazy, standing ovation, the whole 9 yards. Jimmy's doing his usual thing, big smile, handshake, getting Jack settled into the guest chair. Everything seems normal. Jimmy starts off with some softball questions talking about Jack's career, his iconic roles, the usual late-night fare. Jack's giving these classic Nicholson answers, that trademark grin, a little mysterious, a little playful. The audience is eating it up. Then Jimmy pivots. He starts talking about Jack's reputation in Hollywood, and at first, it still seems harmless. He's making jokes about Jack being this enigmatic figure, rarely doing interviews, being selective about his public appearances. Jack's nodding along, still smiling, but if you watch closely, you can see something shift in his expression. It's subtle, but it's there. Jimmy says, "You know, Jack, a lot of people say you've become kind of a recluse. You don't do many interviews anymore. You're not seen out and about like you used to be. Some people are wondering if maybe Hollywood has moved on without you." The audience goes quiet. You can hear it, that collective intake of breath. Jack's smile doesn't fade, but it changes. It becomes something else entirely, something sharper. He leans back in his chair, takes a long pause, and then he says, "Is that what some people are saying, Jimmy? Or is that what you're saying?" Jimmy laughs, trying to play it off like it's all in good fun, but you can tell he's realized he might have stepped in something. He says, No, I'm just, I'm asking what everyone's curious about. You're a legend, Jack. People want to know what you're up to." Jack nods slowly, and there's this intensity building behind his eyes. Anyone who's seen Jack Nicholson in his prime knows that look. It's the same look he had in The Shining, in A Few Good Men, in Chinatown. It's the look of a man who's about to say something that's going to cut right through you. "Let me tell you something, Jimmy," Jack starts, and his voice has dropped lower, more serious. "I've been in this business for over 50 years. I've worked with the best directors, the best actors. I've won awards. I've made films that people still talk about decades later. And you're asking me if Hollywood has moved on without me?" Jimmy's trying to backtrack now. "Jack, I didn't mean it like that. I was just..." But Jack cuts him off. No, let's talk about it. Let's really talk about it. Because I think what you're actually asking is why I don't play the game anymore. Why I don't show up to every premiere, every party, every interview show. Why I don't spend my time glad-handing and schmoozing and pretending like I need any of this to validate who I am or what I've accomplished. The audience is dead silent now. This isn't fun anymore. This isn't light late-night banter. This is real tension, real conflict happening right in front of everyone. Jimmy's face has changed completely. He's not smiling anymore. He's looking at Jack like he's trying to figure out how to steer this ship back on course, but Jack's not giving him an inch. "You want to know why I don't do many interviews, Jimmy? I'll tell you why. Because I've earned the right not to. Because I don't owe anyone an explanation for how I choose to live my life. I've given everything to this craft, and if I want to step back and enjoy my life on my own terms, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I don't need some late-night talk show host implying that I'm washed up or irrelevant to make yourself feel important." Jimmy's mouth opens, but nothing comes out at first. You can see him processing this, trying to figure out how to respond. Finally, he manages to say, "Jack, that's not what I was trying to say at all. I have nothing but respect for you and your career. You're one of the greatest actors of all time." Jack leans forward now, pointing his finger, not aggressively, but definitively. Then why did you say it, Jimmy? Why did you bring up this idea that Hollywood has moved on? What were you hoping to get out of that question? Did you think I was going to break down and admit that I'm desperate for relevance? Did you think you were going to get some vulnerable moment out of me that you could clip up and put on YouTube? The tension in that studio must have been unbearable. Jimmy's trying to compose himself, and he says, "Look, I ask tough questions sometimes. That's part of the job. But I genuinely didn't mean any disrespect." Jack sits back again, and there's a long pause. "Tough questions," he repeats, almost laughing. "You think that was a tough question? Let me ask you a tough question, Jimmy. How does it feel knowing that when people think of great late-night hosts, they think of Carson, they think of Letterman, they think of Conan, and you're just, what, the guy who's on after the news? How does it feel knowing that no matter how many years you do this, you'll always be in someone else's shadow?" The audience gasps. Some people let out nervous laughs, not sure if this is still part of the show or if they're witnessing something genuinely hostile. Jimmy's face goes red, and you can see him struggling to maintain his composure. Jimmy takes a breath, and you can see him trying to decide whether to fight back or de-escalate. He chooses to push forward. "That's a low blow, Jack. I've worked incredibly hard to build this show, and I'm proud of what we've accomplished here." Jack nods, but there's no warmth in it. "I'm sure you are, and I'm sure you work hard. But let's not pretend that what you do is remotely comparable to what I do. You read jokes off a teleprompter and ask celebrities pre-screened questions. I create characters that live in people's minds forever. We're not in the same business, Jimmy. We're not even in the same universe." Jimmy's jaw tightens. "You know what, Jack? Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm not a legendary actor. But at least I show up. At least I'm still relevant. At least people still want to hear what I have to say. When was the last time you were in a movie that anyone actually cared about? And there it is." The gloves are completely off now. Jack's expression darkens, and for a moment, you genuinely wonder if he's going to stand up and walk off the set. But he doesn't. Instead, he leans forward and his voice becomes dangerously quiet. "Careful, Jimmy. You're about to cross a line you can't come back from." But Jimmy's committed now. Maybe it's pride, maybe it's adrenaline, maybe he's just tired of being lectured by someone he invited onto his own show. Whatever it is, he doesn't back down. "What line is that, Jack?" "The line where I point out that you haven't had a significant role in years. The line where I mention that the industry you claim hasn't moved on from you has actually moved on from you. You can sit there and act like you're above it all, but the truth is, you're not making movies because nobody's asking you to anymore." The audience is in complete shock. Some people are looking at each other, some have their hands over their mouths, some look like they want to leave but they're frozen in their seats. This has gone so far beyond what anyone expected from a late-night talk show appearance. Jack stares at Jimmy for what feels like an eternity. Then, slowly, a smile spreads across his face. But it's not a friendly smile. It's the smile of someone who's about to destroy you with words and is savoring the moment before he does it. "Nobody's asking me anymore," Jack repeats, almost to himself. "That's what you think this is about? You think I'm not working because I can't get hired? Jimmy, I have 3 scripts sitting on my desk right now from directors who would cut off their own arm to work with me. I have producers calling my agent every week begging me to look at their projects. I could be working tomorrow if I wanted to. The difference between you and me is that you need this. You need the validation. You need the applause. You need people to tell you that you matter. I don't. I know who I am. I know what I've accomplished. And I don't need to prove anything to you or anyone else in this town." Jimmy's face is flushed now, and his voice rises. "You know what I think, Jack? I think you're scared. I think you're afraid that if you go back to work, people are going to realize that you're not as good as you used to be. I think you're hiding behind this whole 'I don't need to work' act because you're terrified of being exposed as someone who's past their prime." The studio has never been quieter. This is no longer an interview. This is a genuine fight happening on live television, and nobody knows how to stop it. Jack stands up, not quickly, not dramatically, but deliberately. He's still looking at Jimmy, and when he speaks, his voice is ice cold. "You want to talk about being scared, Jimmy? Let's talk about it. You sit behind this desk every night, making safe jokes about safe topics, never taking any real risks, never saying anything that might actually cost you something. You punch down at people who can't fight back and punch up at people who are too big to care. You play it safe because you're terrified of losing this gig, because you know that if this show goes away, what else do you have? At least when I was at my peak, I was fearless. I took risks. I did things that scared me. Can you say the same? Jimmy stands up too now, and they're face to face across the desk. You want to talk about fearless, Jack? You're standing on my stage, insulting me on my own show, and you think I'm going to just sit here and take it? I invited you here with nothing but respect, and you've done nothing but disrespect me and my work from the moment you sat down. I disrespected you. Jack laughs, a sharp, bitter sound. You're the one who opened this door, Jimmy. You're the one who decided to imply that I'm washed up and irrelevant. You started this, and now you're upset that I'm finishing it? Jimmy points at Jack, his hand shaking slightly. I asked you a legitimate question about your career choices, and you turned it into a personal attack. You made this about ego and pride when it didn't have to be. All you had to do was give a simple answer, maybe make a joke, move on to the next question. But you couldn't do that, could you? Because you're so consumed with proving that you're still the biggest guy in the room that you can't have a normal conversation without turning it into a confrontation. Jack's eyes narrow. You think I'm consumed with proving myself? Look in the mirror, kid. You're the one who needs to prove something. You're the one who invited me on this show hoping some of my legend would rub off on you. You wanted to be the guy who got Jack Nicholson to open up, to share something real, to give you that moment that everyone would be talking about tomorrow. Well, congratulations. You got your moment. People are definitely going to be talking about this tomorrow. Just not in the way you hoped. Jimmy's breathing hard now, and you can see the anger radiating off him. You know what your problem is, Jack. You're so busy living in the past that you can't see the present. You talk about your legacy like it gives you the right to treat people however you want. But you know what? Your legacy doesn't give you the right to come on my show and belittle what I do. It doesn't give you the right to act like you're better than everyone else. Jack takes a step closer to the desk, and his voice drops even lower. I don't act like I'm better than everyone else, Jimmy. I act like I'm better than you. And you know why? Because I am. I've earned that right through 5 decades of work that actually matters. What have you earned? A time slot and a decent salary? That's not legacy. That's just employment. The audience is starting to react now. Some people booing, some people gasping, some actually cheering because they can't believe what they're witnessing. Jimmy looks out at the audience, then back at Jack, and you can see something shift in his expression. He's made a decision. All right, you want to do this? Let's really do this. You talk about your 5 decades of work like it's this untouchable thing, but let's be honest about what that career actually looks like. Yeah, you were incredible in the 70s and 80s. Chinatown, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, The Shining, nobody disputes that. But what about the last 20 years, Jack? What about all those forgettable movies you did for a paycheck? What about phoning it in over and over again because you knew your name alone would sell tickets? You want to talk about legacy. Your legacy is tarnished by the fact that you spent the back half of your career coasting on the front half. Jack's face hardens, and for the first time you can see that Jimmy's words have actually landed. But instead of backing down, Jack doubles down. At least I had a front half worth coasting on. What are you going to coast on, Jimmy? Mediocrity? You want to criticize my career choices? Fine. But don't pretend like you have any room to talk. You've never taken a risk in your entire professional life. You've never put yourself out there in a way that could actually fail spectacularly. You play it safe, you stay in your lane, and you collect your paycheck. That's not artistry. That's not even entertainment. That's just showing up. Jimmy slams his hand on the desk, and the sound echoes through the studio. I take risks every single night. Do you know how hard it is to do a live show 5 nights a week? Do you know the pressure of having to be funny, to be relevant, to keep people watching when they have a million other options? You make one movie every few years, if that, and you get to do take after take until you get it right. I get one shot every single night, and if I screw up, everyone sees it. One shot every night at what? Jack fires back. At being vanilla? At being forgettable? Jimmy, nobody's going to remember your show 10 years from now. Nobody's going to look back and say, "Remember that incredible thing Jimmy Kimmel did?" You're not Carson. You're not even Fallon. You're just the guy who happened to be on TV during this particular era, and when you're gone, they'll replace you with another guy who does the exact same thing, and nobody will notice the difference. The words hang in the air like a bomb that just detonated. Jimmy's face goes through about 5 different emotions in the span of 3 seconds. Anger, hurt, rage, disbelief, and then something else. Something harder. "Get off my stage," Jimmy says quietly. Jack raises his eyebrows. "What was that?" "I said get off my stage," Jimmy repeats louder this time. "This interview is over. You don't get to come on my show, insult me, insult my work, insult everything I've built, and then just sit here like nothing happened. You're done. Leave." Jack laughs, but there's no humor in it. "Oh, now you want to pull rank? Now you want to be the big man and kick me off your show? That's rich, Jimmy. That's really rich. You start a fire and then act surprised when it burns your house down." "I didn't start anything," Jimmy shouts, and now his voice is echoing through the whole studio. "I asked you a question, one question about your career, and you turned it into this whole nightmare. You made this personal. You made this ugly. And now you're acting like I'm the villain here?" Jack spreads his arms wide, addressing the audience now as much as Jimmy. "You asked me why I don't work as much anymore, and you framed it like I'm washed up, like I'm irrelevant, like I'm some has-been desperately clinging to past glory. That's not a neutral question, Jimmy. That's an accusation dressed up as curiosity." And yeah, I responded. I responded honestly. If you can't handle honesty, then maybe you shouldn't be asking questions you don't want answered. Jimmy walks around the desk now, and he's standing just a few feet from Jack. The camera operators are scrambling to get the right angles. The producers in the booth are probably losing their minds, and the audience doesn't know whether to keep watching or run for the exits. "Honest?" Jimmy's voice is shaking. "You call that honest?" "You didn't answer my question, Jack. You just attacked me. You went after my career, my credibility, my worth as a performer. That's not honesty. That's cruelty. And you did it because you could. Because you knew the audience would be too starstruck to call you out on it. Because you're Jack Nicholson, and you think that means you can say whatever you want without consequences." Jack steps forward, closing the distance between them even more. "What consequences, Jimmy? What are you going to do? You going to ban me from the show? You think I care? You think I need this platform? I came here as a favor, because your producers called my people and asked nicely. I came here because I thought maybe it would be fun. Maybe it would be interesting. But you couldn't just let it be a conversation. You had to make it a test. You had to try to take me down a peg. And now you're upset because I didn't play along? A favor?" Jimmy laughs bitterly. "You came here because you need publicity just like everyone else. You came here because even Jack Nicholson needs to remind people he still exists. And you know what? Maybe I did want a real moment. Maybe I did want to get past the rehearsed answers and the carefully managed image. But instead, all I got was your ego and your need to dominate every single interaction you're in." Jack stares at Jimmy for a long moment, and then something shifts in his demeanor. The anger is still there, but there's something else now too. Something almost like disappointment. "You want a real moment, Jimmy? Here's a real moment. You're right. I do have an ego. I've always had an ego. You don't get to where I am without one. But the difference between my ego and yours is that mine is backed up by actual achievement. Mine is earned. I've created things that matter. I've moved people, made them think, made them feel. What have you done? Made them chuckle while they're falling asleep? Made them momentarily forget about their lives for 11 minutes between commercial breaks? That's not nothing, but it's not something either." Jimmy's fists clench at his sides. "You don't get to define what matters, Jack. You don't get to decide what's worthy and what's not. Maybe my work doesn't hang in some museum of great cinema, but it matters to people. It brings them joy. It gives them something to look forward to. And yeah, maybe it's not as deep or profound as your movies, but it's real and it's mine, and I'm proud of it. Then be proud of it." Jack says, his voice suddenly quieter. Be proud of it without trying to tear me down. Be proud of it without needing to prove that I'm past my prime. That's what this is really about, isn't it? You don't actually believe I'm washed up. You just need me to be washed up because if I'm not, if I'm still who I've always been, then what does that say about where you are? What does that say about what you've accomplished? The studio is so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Jimmy's face is red. His jaw is tight, and you can see him struggling with whether to keep fighting or to find some way to end this. Finally, he speaks, and his voice is strained. You know what, Jack? Maybe you're right. Maybe I did want to take you down a peg. Maybe I am intimidated by you and everything you represent. Maybe sitting across from someone like you makes me feel small, makes me question whether what I do has any value at all. But you know what else? That doesn't give you the right to eviscerate me on my own show. That doesn't give you permission to humiliate me in front of my audience, my crew, everyone watching at home. You could have been gracious. You could have taken the high road. But instead, you chose to be cruel. Jack's expression softens, just barely. I wasn't trying to be cruel, Jimmy. I was trying to be honest. Maybe the problem is you can't tell the difference anymore. Maybe you've been doing this job for so long, playing this role of the friendly, accessible host, that you've forgotten what real honesty looks like. It's not cruel to tell someone the truth. It's cruel to lie to them, to let them believe things that aren't real, to enable their delusions. My delusions? Jimmy's voice rises again. What delusions? That I'm good at my job? That I've built something meaningful? That I deserve respect? That you're in the same league as the people you interview, Jack says bluntly. Jimmy, you're a commentator. You're a reactor. You exist in the space between the people who create things and the people who consume them. There's nothing wrong with that, but you need to understand what it is. You're not an artist. You're a curator. And there's a difference. Jimmy shakes his head, and you can see tears forming in his eyes, whether from anger or hurt or both. I can't believe this. I can't believe you're standing here on my stage, telling me that my life's work is basically worthless. Do you have any idea how much I've sacrificed for this show? How many hours I've put in? How many relationships I've strained? How much of myself I've given to make this work? And I respect that, Jack says, and for the first time his voice carries a note of something that might be empathy. I do. But sacrifice doesn't equal significance, Jimmy. Lots of people sacrifice. Lots of people work hard. That doesn't automatically make what they're doing important. I'm not saying your work is worthless. I'm saying it's not what you think it is. And maybe that's the real issue here. Maybe you've built up this idea of yourself and what you do, and having me sit here and question it feels like an attack on your entire identity. Jimmy wipes his eyes quickly, clearly not wanting to show weakness, but it's too late. Everyone has seen it. You don't know me, Jack. You don't know what my work means to me or what it means to the people who watch. You don't get to come in here with your 3 Oscars and your legendary status and tell me that I don't matter. I never said you don't matter, Jack responds. I said you're not me. And you're not. Nobody is. That's not arrogance, Jimmy. That's just fact. There's only one Jack Nicholson, just like there's only one Jimmy Kimmel. The problem is you're trying to be more than that, and you're upset with me for pointing out that you're not. Jimmy takes a step back and he looks exhausted. The fight seems to be draining out of him, replaced by something else. Resignation, maybe. Or just fatigue. I don't know what you want from me, Jack. I don't know what this was supposed to accomplish. You came on my show, we got into an argument, you said some terrible things, I said some terrible things, and now what? What happens now? Jack looks at him for a long moment, then glances at the audience, then back at Jimmy. Now? Now you decide what kind of host you want to be. Do you want to be the guy who can handle the truth, even when it's uncomfortable? Or do you want to be the guy who only wants guests who will play along and make you look good? Because if it's the latter, then yeah, you should probably never invite me back. But if it's the former, if you actually want to do something real and meaningful with this platform, then maybe you should think about why this conversation made you so angry. It made me angry because you insulted me, Jimmy practically yells. Because you came into my house and disrespected me. How is that complicated? It's not the insults that made you angry. Jack says calmly. It's the truth in them. If I had just said random mean things, you would have laughed it off. But I hit something real, something you've been worried about, and that's what you can't forgive. That's what's really happening here. Jimmy stares at Jack, and the silence stretches between them. Finally, Jimmy speaks, his voice barely above a whisper. Get out, please, just get out. Jack nods slowly, like this is exactly what he expected. He doesn't say anything else. He just turns and walks toward the exit. The audience doesn't know whether to applaud or boo or stay silent, so they do all three at once, creating this strange, discordant noise. Jack doesn't acknowledge any of it. He just walks off the stage like he's walking off a movie set after a particularly difficult scene. Jimmy stands there watching him go, and then he looks at the camera. His face is a mess of emotions, anger and hurt and confusion all mixed together. He opens his mouth like he's going to say something, then closes it again. Finally, he manages to speak. We're going to take a commercial break. And that's where it ends. The most explosive late-night interview maybe ever. Two massive egos colliding in real time, neither one willing to back down, both of them saying things that can't be unsaid. No neat resolution, no apologies, no moment where they shake hands and laugh it off. Just raw, unfiltered conflict. So what do you think? Was Jack out of line for going after Jimmy like that? Or did Jimmy start something he couldn't finish? Drop a comment below with your take, and make sure you subscribe because we're going to keep breaking down the wildest moments in television history. Who do you think won this confrontation, Jack or Jimmy?